if you're a chosen one, you know that you're a chosen one. And there's going to be a lot of enemies that come up and harass you and say, oh, you're not a chosen one. There'll be people that say, you just have a Messiah complex. And, they target you because of God's Holy Spirit that's inside of you. And any human can decide to be a chosen one. So God calls every person, and if they accept that calling, they have made a choice. When you make a choice of your own free will, you are then chosen. So it's actually based on your action. And so we are surrounded by narcissists. We're surrounded by Jezebels, Ahabs, serpents, every type of demon. And they attack us, target us our entire lives. And we know that things are difficult. And that, like, when you try to explain things to people, it just doesn't get through. And, like, for a long time, I just tried to convince people and explain facts to them, thinking, like, if I just explain it this way, then they'll understand. But no, they intentionally oppose us and argue and harass us. And it's not about truth. In fact, they detest truth. They despise truth. Their native tongue is lies. So it doesn't matter what the truth is. If you were wrong and you were arguing on the side of lies, they would still they might actually choose to defend the truth then, just to cause trouble. But despite being surrounded by enemies, I think that we also have some people in the spirit realm on our side. Now, of course, there are myriad angels and heavenly armies helping us out, and God's watching us. But most people that we know on earth are enemies. And I would say for the first half of our lives, just everyone that we see is an enemy, and we don't know that. We just think they're normal people, and we don't find out until later. These are actually all spirits. And if they are human, they have made a choice to work for the devil, coming against us and opposing us. But I do believe that there are people that we knew in our lives that were rooting for us, and they actually did things to help us out. They did things to help us out, and we didn't know it at the time because we were unaware that we were different. We were unaware that God would deem us important enough to design a life path just for us, to allow us to become prophets and to have missions. This is one thing that, I thought personally, as you read these stories, or you hear these stories that are written about in the Bible, and there's not that many prophets, but there are people in the Bible that are important. And angels came down and talked to them, and they had books written about them. And they had witches, and they had riches and wealth, and they became leaders and kings. And they were important, and they were chosen, but we were just normal, weak, pathetic humans like filthy rags, and that we were just to get through life. But no, actually, that's quite the opposite of the truth, because I believe now, every single human can be chosen. Every single human is called, in my belief, is called by God. They can choose to accept or dismiss that calling. And our lives, we are surrounded by demons and devils and people who we think are family and friends, but they are not. But we knew people in our lives that were rooting for us, and we didn't know at the time because they died. They died shortly before we were activated. And I recognize this. Knowing what I know now, I recognize this. And I truly believe at least one of my grandparents did things to help me on the way, knowingly or unknowingly. But one of my grandparents, my grandmother, I believe, was rooting for me all along. And both of my grandmothers had died about 5 years before the Battle of Armageddon kicked off. So I'm going to say Battle of Armageddon began when Trump became president the first time. And that's why you saw all these evil, wicked people and walking demons coming out and bashing Trump, complaining about Trump. And yes, it is the end of the world, because when he became president, he was God's chosen leader to kick off the Battle of Armageddon. So I will say, I'm not sure about both of my grandmothers, but one of my grandmothers, I believe, maybe she didn't know who I was, just somebody that would accept God's calling and be filled with the Holy Spirit and defeat generational curses, and just something that any of us could have chosen to do, and every single bloodline has one. But there were chosen 144,000 to begin with, and after that many follow suit, many come to faith. So then it could be the majority of people that are left also become chosen after this first wave. But one of my grandmothers, I truly believe, was always on my side. Both of my grandmothers died very close to each other. Their ages were very different. There was like more than 20-year age difference, but they both died at the same time, within the same year. And this is based on my memory, but it was very strange. I'm not sure both of my grandmothers were on my side. I'm not, but I know one of them. One of them was. And just something I'd asked and something I'd said as a very young child, and what was answered there. And she was very spiritual. I'm not going to get into a lot of specifics. I'm not going to get into a lot of specifics, but I did say something. I asked her a question as a child, the way she answered it. And then, of course, being young and naive and, like, very young, I probably caused a lot of trouble by things I said. But I didn't do it intentionally to hurt. It's more like what she told me when I repeated it later, trying to, to show other people the truth. Then I ended up hurting her, but I was just a very young child. I mentioned being able to see like little transparent, like translucent mole type creatures, and I think that my grandmother is Native American, and she was very spiritual. She was not necessarily a Christian or anything like that, but towards the end of her life, she posted about God non-stop. She was in total belief at that point, and she died young. She was a smoker. She died young. Everybody in that side of the family smokes, so I was called to be a curse breaker there. But anyways, there's a few things that she did. So first of all, the question I asked her as a young child, which I'm not going to post here, and I did mention to her I could see spiritual beings. She didn't freak out. She didn't say anything. I think she knew, and maybe she could see certain things too. She was very wise. She was very calm. When I was a teenager, she, this is kind of funny, she gave me one of those romance novels, which is basically porn. She gave me one of those. And if you're a chosen one, you know that your mother's Jezebel. And so Jezebels aren't one to be concerned about this type of thing. But actually, this book that she gave me, I started reading it before my mother saw it, and she was like, oh, don't give her that, and then she took it away. But I started reading it because my grandmother gave it to me, and she said it was good. And it was basically like someone that this woman was supposed to be with. And I guess she just didn't, like, it just wasn't really a good match, and it was kind of like boring or whatever. Someone she was supposed to be with. And then somebody completely different, from a different ethnic background, something happens there, and then that's like some taboo thing, but like, that was what was meant. So it's weird. I didn't read this whole book, but I started reading it because my grandmother gave it to me. I think the point she gave that was not because the book was a porno, because essentially it is, but the point was that This woman was supposed to be somebody with somebody. It was not exciting. It was not great. It probably would have been worse later. I just started reading it. And then there was somebody just completely different, unexpected. And then they have an encounter, and then that's like, so she should have left behind this arranged marriage that she was in. So I thought maybe that is significant. And then something else, like, because maybe that's significant. Maybe it's not. Because she couldn't just give me a boring book or show me a Disney movie. If she showed me a Disney movie about, like, Princess Jasmine's supposed to marry this other prince, and instead she runs off with Aladdin. Essentially something like that, okay? But if it's just that type of thing, then it's not going to stick in your mind and you're not going to remember it. But because it was one of these adult books, then I remembered that. And then something that my mother had gave me was actually led to a whole chain of events happening here in this new town. It's something that my mother had given me. But it actually wasn't from my mother. So I'm not going to comment on this now. But the situation, you hear my dog snoring, the situation that I'm in now, something happened that was like a trigger, and because of this whole thing, then there was like spiritual visions and things that I experienced. And it was all because of this thing that my mom gave me, but it really wasn't from her, it was from my grandmother. So right before my grandmother died, she got something that was really expensive for her, that she couldn't even afford. I'm sure she charged it on the credit card. She got something for my mom right before she died. But my mom was unable to use it, so my mom gave it to me. And my mom gave it to me after I moved to this house. And the thing that she gave to me was an important key to unlocking something spiritual that happened since I moved to this town. So I'm thinking that my grandmother was used to give this item to me. She couldn't give it to me directly, and I didn't need it at the time. I'm gonna have to edit this out. Okay, so the item that was given to my mother was something that I had no use for at the old house, but I needed as soon as I moved here and I had my own house. And so it was the only way my grandmother could give this item to me. But she had to give it to my mother, and then a couple years later, I would have to leave my house and move 100 miles away. And I would need this item. So it's like she knew. She knew what she gave to my mom was really for me. But I didn't need it yet. I really think that the things she said, and the way she behaved, and she was wise, I think she was on my side. Now, I would like to think my other grandmother is on my side too. And in the spirit, you know what? Actually, I kind of think she's on my side. But maybe not while she was on Earth. And not while she was alive. Because, see, I tried to share the Quran with her. And she didn't like that. She was a normal Christian. Which means that if I told her something that was in the Bible, but they didn't cover it in church, she would be like, oh no, that's heresy. And it's right there in the Bible. So very much conforming to the status quo, but she was such a sweet, kind person. But I don't think she took an affinity towards me or anything. And since I was not, I didn't follow the trends, and, like everyone else did, that I always felt like she didn't like me that much. But actually, I think that changed in the spirit when she understood, because she didn't know. So I think she's on my side now. Both of my grandmothers died. a few years before this Battle of Armageddon. And the reason I think this, because like I tried to give her supplements and things to help her health, and she didn't want it. She didn't want anything to do with it. And she didn't like what I had to say, and there wasn't like a feeling of closeness really. But here's something to note, which I've made a video about before. She was in the old folks' home, whatever you call those, and apparently she was like going in and out her last few days of life. So I didn't even know this. I just heard, oh, she's dying, and then me and the narcissist and the kids, we drove like 100 miles or so, maybe less than 100. We drove like probably 45 minutes to where she was staying, the retirement home, because she was dying. And as soon as we pulled into the parking lot, I got a call that she had passed. So once we pulled into the parking lot, we were parking and about to walk in, I got a phone call from my father that my grandmother just died. Well, a month or two ago, so this happened years ago, but no one ever told me the details, and I didn't ask. People hid a lot of things from me, and they wouldn't tell me. Like, they didn't tell me that she was going in and out of consciousness for days either. So a couple months ago, I called my uncle, and I just asked him. I was just asking him what went on, like, because he didn't really, he was very distraught. He loved his mom so much. He was really affected by that, but, and I just asked, like, I was trying to find out, like, did she say anything before she died or something, and how, he's like, no, she didn't say anything, and he basically told me that maybe she, not like in a coma, but she was just like laying there and not responsive for days. She was not responsive for days, going in and out of consciousness, and nobody told me this. They just said she's about to die, and that's when we drove down to see her. But she had been like that for days. And when did she pass? When we were in the parking lot, right about to park and walk in. It was me and the narcissist and our children. So I believe happened is when she was going in and out of consciousness, she was going into the spirit realm, she became aware of the situation, and she saw us in the spirit. So before she saw us, I think that she probably spoke to and saw some angels, and they told her what was going on, and she stayed there in her body until we were in the parking lot where her spirit could see who I was and who my ex-narcissist was. And all the things that she didn't know, she was never rude to me and she was never mean to me. I just didn't feel the closeness there. So she was a very good person. I just didn't feel like a bond, really. What I'm saying is that I think that she was made aware of the situation in the spirit as she was going in and out of consciousness for days. And she stayed in her body until we arrived so she could see me and she could see him. And then she left. Because this mission had to play out. Nobody could be told what was going on. It had to happen. So I think that probably since then, she's been working in the spirit realm to help out. I think my other grandmother has been working in the spirit realm to help out. The people alive now, I don't think so. The people alive, I don't think so. And it doesn't mean they're all bad. Some are good. It's just with God's prophecy, we have to be the scapegoats, and we will be vindicated, and then people will see, actually, we weren't the problem. Things didn't get better when we left. Things got worse when we left. And the truth is revealed. And the table is prepared in front of our enemies. But then later, hopefully, some of them, if not all of them, can come to faith as well. But, yeah, I do believe there are people on this earth that we knew. They were always rooting for us, but they did die. Those people passed before the Battle of Armageddon had started. And so the people that we we do interact with now are mostly enemies, I would say. If not all of them are enemies, and far and few between, you know. I mean, you can see angels often, but normally in isolation, you're not really getting too much help. The table's being prepared, but it's not presented yet. The dinner hasn't started yet. Dinner probably does include food, but it's not all. It's our whole life and the victory and how things are better than they were before, I suppose. But, yeah, I think my whole life, my one grandmother was always on my side. She didn't make it too clear. And she had her own children. And her own children. And my own children. And everyone's own children. They have to side with them. And so this is not, it's not a competition. It's not anything like that. But when these people have their demons, like everyone does, except for the chosen at the end of the age, there's only so much you can say. It's just like wisdom to not speak. But there's like this silent awareness and knowing to where you can just tell. This person knows a lot more than they're letting on, and they're not saying what they know. If they did say what they know, it wouldn't help. It would only create a rift between them and everyone else who is also our enemy. So, I mean, think about in your life. You probably have the same thing. You say, everyone that's living appears to be an enemy, or they're just separated from you. If they're not an enemy, you're just not on speaking terms. There's actually a lot of people who are probably neutral. They have a negative opinion of you because your enemies are speaking badly about you. Your enemies are slandering you behind your back to everyone else. And they're in a position of neutrality, and maybe they believe it, maybe they don't. It doesn't really matter. Because for the sake of keeping the peace, they're just not speaking to you. They're like, maybe I don't really believe that, but, you know, if I said anything, this person would argue me a lot. And, like, you know, they're not really a close relative or somebody I even see in the first place. So it is of no benefit of me. So there are probably people that you don't know about, recently deceased, ancestors, actually, not just recently deceased, probably ancestors and generations before them rooting us on right now. That were able to break curses off of our bloodlines. And we don't even have to do anything. We just have to accept the mission. So God creates a battle plan, and we just accept and say, God, I'll do what you want. And so God defeats the enemies. But there has to be a willing vessel to go along with that plan, to go through the motions. We just have to agree. And that's all I can get into on this video. I did stay up all night again. Yeah, I know it's not good, but I'm going to have to edit something out of this video. I said a little too much. I said some stuff that was supposed to be private. But just think in your own family. And for me, if my grandmothers are on my side now, maybe for you, your grandmothers are on your side. Now, think if your grandmothers have a Jezebel daughter and an Ahab son, why they could only say so much to you. And they had to be quiet. Think of the ways that they actually were secretly supporting you or doing things that led to a chain of events later in your life that were important now to your table being prepared.